Hello and welcome. Today we delve into a cryptographic battle that changed the course of history, a mysterious signal intercepted on March the 15th, 19144, in the heart of Japan's naval intelligence operations, a message so complex that even Japan's most skilled cryptanalysts spent nearly 18 hours futilely trying to decipher it, only to realize that we were facing an unbreakable code. How could a message remain completely impenetrable despite the best efforts of decades of cryptographic mastery? Could it be a new, uncrackable form of communication that defied all known methods? Or was there something even more extraordinary behind this enigma? And what if I told you that this unbreakable code was linked to a secret linguistic system, one so intricate that it baffled the world's top cryptographers for generations? But the real game changer wasn't just the message. It was the story behind it, rooted in a language spoken by only about 170,000 Navajo people, developed over centuries to become a military secret like no other. How did a remote indigenous language become the ultimate cipher in the Second World War? And what role did a man named Johnston, fluent in Navajo since childhood, play in creating a code so secure that it remains unbroken to this day? The answers to these questions lead us into a tale of military innovation, linguistic brilliance, and cryptographic legend. And now the most astonishing part begins. Let's uncover the story behind the world's most unbreakable code, starting with the secret language that kept defenses impenetrable and secrets safe in the chaos of war. On March the 15th, in the year of 1944, a day that would etch itself into the annals of military history, Japanese naval intelligence stood at the crossroads of an ongoing cryptographic battle. Located within the specialized confines of the headquarters at Ada Communications Unit, a pivotal node nestled somewhere in Japan, Commander Atsuso Kurihara meticulously examined the latest intercepted dispatches to his console. His focus was unwavering, and as he propped himself slightly forward, he stared at the complex waveforms dancing across the screen, while his third cup of steaming, yet now cold, bitter tea sat forgotten beside him on the desk. For nearly 18 hours, an exhausting, relentless span of work, Kurihara and his team of what were arguably among Japan's most skilled cryptanalysts had relentlessly grappled with the challenge of deciphering what they initially assumed to be unconventional American military communications, originating from the Marines engaged in operations across the Marshall Islands. The signals they picked up bore a baffling signature, echoing traits unlike any coded transmissions Japan's cryptography divisions had encountered before. Despite utilizing every conceivable decoding method in their repertoire, from classic substitution to frequency analysis, the sounds transmitted remained stubbornly elusive, defying all attempts at pattern identification. Yet beneath this apparent chaos, there was an unmistakable structure. The transmissions weren't merely random noises or scribbles hiding in the electromagnetic spectrum. Rather, they exhibited a discernible form of discipline. The timing of signals suggested deliberate intervals consistent with tactical planning, signs that these messages weren't incidental, but part of a strategic flow, possibly accompanying military maneuvers or attacks. The duration of each transmission aligned with known operational commands, and the frequency bands used mirrored established Marine Corps protocols. What baffled Kurihara even more was that the underlying electrical patterns correlated, at least superficially, with rules familiar from Allied communication tags. However, the very words or language used in these signals, the sentient element, remained as impenetrable as an uncrackable fortress, as if they hailed from a different logic altogether. What this meant for Kurihara was that they were confronting an unprecedented level of cryptographical resilience. From the very beginning of the Pacific conflict, Japan's cryptanalysts had built an impressive track record. Their successes in deciphering diplomatic cables, such as the guarded messages transmitted by American officials, the intricate naval encryptions utilized by the British fleet, and multiple enemy army ciphers had fueled their intelligence victories. Prior to the attack on Pearl Harbor, they had also broken into the infamous Purple Code of the United States State Department, gaining access to diplomatic secrets that proved invaluable during the early years of the war. Kilometers had been navigated successfully, all while maintaining the superiority that Japan's signals intelligence units were renowned for. But these Marine Corps communications turned out to be different. Despite having broken administrative, diplomatic, and military codes in the past, Kurihara's crypt analysts found themselves helpless at the doorstep of this new enigma. Their decades of experience, classical methods, and advanced machinery fell short against the cryptographic fortress presented by these signals. After 3 long years into the broad scope of the global war, in the midst of deciphering insurmountable layers of enemy encryption, Japan's most talented cryptographers couldn't spot even basic, repeating patterns or structural clues in these marine messages, leaving them with an embarrassing, frustrating, cryptographic dead end. What was it, then, that made this particular communication so historically significant? What no Japanese intelligence officer, however seasoned, could have deciphered at that point in time, what would only be uncovered long after the conflict concluded, was that they were listening to the only truly unbreakable code in all of contemporary military history. Unbeknownst to the Japanese, these signals embodied a cryptographic perfection that would stand as an unassailable mystery for the world's code breakers and cryptographers for decades to come. The narrative behind this mysterious exchange begins far from the Pacific Theater, in the American Southwest, where deep within the desert landscapes and rugged hills, the Navajo people had, over centuries, preserved a language unlike any other found on Earth. Known as Dina Bizard in their own tongue, the Navajo language belonged to a language family called Athabascan, which included numerous related dialects found across North America. But the Navajo dialect itself had evolved into an exceptional, highly complex code of immense linguistic subtlety and richness. In the year of 1940, approximately 170,000 people still spoke Navajo, a number confined largely within the borders of a sprawling reservation complex across 4 states, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado, covering about 27,000 square miles of primarily rugged and mountainous terrain. The cache of this ancestral language lay in its unique structural features, developed over endless generations, which would ultimately confound a veritable army of cryptoanalysts overseas. Fundamentally centered around verbs, Navajo incorporated a language structure characterized by highly detailed, layered prefixes, which when combined could produce an astonishing array of meanings. Johnston recognized the strategic importance of this linguistic stronghold's military potential immediately. Born in the year of our Lord 1892 to a dedicated Protestant missionary working on the Navajo reservation, Johnston was immersed from an early age in the Navajo language and culture. His childhood was characterized not merely by casual familiarity, but by fluency so complete that he was among fewer than 30 non-native Navajos worldwide capable of such mastery. By the time he reached the age of 9, Johnston was already translating his father's sermons into Navajo, showcasing an impressive command of complex spiritual and doctrinal concepts. By the age of 15, he had traveled all the way to Washington, D.C., to serve as a translator for Navajo tribal leaders, an experience that brought him face-to-face with the nation's then-president, Theodore Roosevelt. As the years progressed into the period of the Second World War, Johnston's observations grew more strategic. In December of 1941, amid the chaos and grief following the attack on Pearl Harbor, he read with keen interest about the use of indigenous languages in military training exercises, specifically how Army units conducted radio communications training in the Comanche language from quarters in Louisiana. Though the Choctaw people had previously served in the First World War, those efforts were relatively spontaneous and limited in scope. Johnston envisioned an even more ambitious idea: the creation of a systematic, classified military communication code grounded in Navajo, one that would be both fundamentally unbreakable by enemies and practical enough for the demands of contemporary warfare. On the 28th day of February in the year of our Lord, 1942, Johnston boldly presented his proposal to Major General Clayton Vogel at Camp Elliott near San Diego. The demonstration that followed was nothing short of extraordinary. 4 Navajo men, recruited from Los Angeles, participated in a live transmission test, during which Marine officers timed how swiftly messages could be communicated using their native language. Remarkably, these Navajo speakers were able to transmit the messages in just 20 seconds, a stark contrast to the standard procedure, using the M209 cipher machine that took a full 30 minutes. Flooded with confidence from the success, General Vogel immediately approved a pilot program. Subsequently, on May the 4th of that same year, 1942, a group of 29 Navajo recruits was sworn into service at Fort Wingate in New Mexico. These men, among them Chester Nez, Carl Gorman, Lloyd Oliver, and John Bennerly, hailed from across the reservation and represented a pure cross-section of the Navajo population. Some had been students in boarding schools where speaking their native language was strictly forbidden and punishable by harsh discipline, leading to a disconnect from their cultural roots. Others were traditional sheep herders, living in isolation within the shadows of their ancestral lands, seldom having contact beyond their immediate community. At Camp Elliott, these brave men worked within a secure, heavily guarded facility, an environment that forbade casual or accidental leakage of their work. Over an intensive 8-week period, they collaborated to develop a comprehensive military code rooted deeply in their native language. The scope of their task was overwhelmingly complex. It involved creating specialized terminology for a wide array of military concepts that had no natural equivalents in Navajo, designing an alphabetic system suitable for encoding purposes, ensuring that the entire system was memorable enough for rapid recall and expandable enough to allow for future growth. The team constructed the code upon cultural and logical foundations inherent in Navajo thought. For example, in their nomenclature, a submarine was called a bestow, a word that evoked the image of an iron fish swimming stealthily beneath the surface. A battleship was dubbed a lot whale, which metaphorically refers to the largest creature of the ocean, emphasizing its size and dominance. The playful yet precise logic extended to airplanes, which were called die, meaning hummingbirds constantly darting through the air, emphasizing their swift, agile movements. Bombers were referred to as jeshao, visualized as buzzards circling ominously before swooping down aggressively. The alphabet road presented an even greater challenge. Each letter of the Navajo alphabet had to be represented by multiple words to thwart any analysis through frequency pattern recognition. For instance, the letter E, often the most common letter in English, had diversity in its code representation, receiving no fewer than 4 different alternative words such as elk, iter, hair, and aare, which also ways to pronounce ear. The code talkers practiced so extensively that they could switch natively between these options effortlessly, disrupting any pattern analysis likely to threaten the security of their communications. In total, they generated and memorized approximately 211 terms, an incredible feat of memory and linguistic ingenuity, creating an unbreakable protective layer, since no physical code books could safely exist and risk capture. Chester Nez vividly recalled these rigorous training efforts, emphasizing that, "We drilled endlessly. A mistake could cost lives." Rooted in their cultural value system, where understanding these transmissions was a task fraught with difficulty and complexity for all involved. Lieutenant Kazuo Yamada, a Japanese cryptanalyst who had been educated at Stanford University prior to the outbreak of hostilities, vividly described the nature of the sounds he and his colleagues encountered. He observed that while the signals exhibited a patterned linguistic structure, displaying certain consistencies and repetitions, they bore no resemblance whatsoever to any known language. Yamada noted that the sounds did not match any form of English, French, Dutch, Spanish, or any dialect spoken in the Philippines or China. Instead, they appeared wholly alien, completely indecipherable by any conventional standards of language analysis. The response from the Japanese side was methodical and relentless. They assigned their most skilled and experienced cryptanalysts to this mysterious task, pouring a vast amount of resources into understanding these messages. Their efforts included recording hundreds of hours of these transmissions onto wax cylinders, an outdated yet painstaking recording medium at the time, which they meticulously analyzed using every available technical method. They sought advice from experts in language and linguistics, including university professors specializing in philology, as well as Buddhist monks who studied ancient, almost forgotten dialects and scripts, in hope of uncovering some recognizable pattern or meaning. Despite their painstaking efforts and diverse approaches, all attempts to crack the code ended in frustration. A significant breakthrough occurred on the 8th of November in the year 1942. On that day, code talker Chester Nez successfully transmitted artillery coordinates that targeted and destroyed a Japanese machine gun nest. Although this communication was intercepted and captured by the Japanese, it appeared to be nothing more than indecipherable noise, nothing that could be interpreted as understandable language. Yet this brief, 14-second transmission was enough for American forces to precisely target the enemy emplacement, demonstrating the effectiveness and importance of the secure communication. Such incidents underscored how this new code, although initially resistant to cracking, was extraordinarily effective. The Japanese military, particularly Colonel Haro Konuma, who served as an intelligence officer for the 17th Army, documented their growing frustration in a direct and somewhat bleak report. The colonel stated, "The Americans have developed a codex that defeats every effort to break it. We are no longer able to anticipate their attacks, and now we find ourselves engaged in combat almost entirely in the dark." This statement echoed the dire reality faced by Japanese forces, unable to decode or interpret the enemy's communications with any consistency. An especially noteworthy episode involves Joe Kalumia, a Navajo soldier captured by the Japanese at Bataan in April of the year 1942. His captivity marked a critical turning point because Japan believed that a true understanding of Navajo design communications could potentially provide the key to breaking their codes. Kalumia was remarkably fluent in Navajo, a language with complex grammar and vocabulary, yet he knew nothing about the military radio code that was being developed by American cryptographers, specifically designed using elements of Navajo. When Japanese cryptanalysts intercepted Navajo transmissions, they brought Kalumia to the Auna Interrogation Center. They played recordings of what the Americans claimed were Navajo Code Talker messages, expecting to capture vital intelligence. Instead, Kalumia heard verses of Navajo words raveled into what sounded like nonsensical strings. "The turtle is attacking the iron fish, and the hummingbird carries eggs." These phrases, starkly meaningless within any geographical or military context, proved perplexing. When he attempted to translate them into English, the Japanese interrogators accused him of lying or deliberately withholding information. The Japanese answer to this obstacle was escalating their interrogation methods dramatically. Over the subsequent months, they used systematic brutality with recurring patterns: water torture, physical beatings, and moments of hanging by the arms for hours, in attempts to prod out some useful response. In the winter of 1943, their cruelty intensified. They forcibly made Kalumia stand, stark naked, in congelating snow until his feet froze to the ground, hoping the torment would coerce some form of meaningful communication. They starved him almost to the brink of deprivation, offering morsels of food in exchange for even a single accurate translation, a barter that wreaths awareness of his desperate, dreadful predicament. Throughout all these brutal efforts, Kalumia consistently maintained a hauntingly simple truth: he could only speak what was true. The core of his predicament was that he understood the words. His Navajo vocabulary was intact and authentic. Yet these words held no meaningful military code or secret message that he knew. His inability to provide intelligence about the messages was not due to ignorance or deception, but because the coded system was entirely unfamiliar and perhaps fundamentally alien to his fluent Navajo comprehension. The Japanese managed to record and document their struggles with Kalumia and other interrogations in military intelligence reports, one of which dated from May of 1943. That report explicitly acknowledged the profound difficulty, almost impossibility, they faced in understanding the Navajo communication. It pointed out, quite frankly, that the prisoner, during the tumultuous days of military training, specially designated recruits engaged in rigorous practice inside soundproof booths designed to simulate high-pressure environments. These chambers were constructed to be completely insulated from external noise, allowing instructors to progressively introduce battlefield sounds, ranging from distant gunfire to the roar of explosions, to challenge the incoming soldiers' focus and adaptability. To build resilience under chemical warfare conditions, the trainees practiced transmitting crucial encoded messages while wearing gas masks, often while pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion to mirror the physical and mental strains of real combat scenarios. One notably courageous recruit, Thomas Bay, who had been only 15 years old when he enlisted, vividly recalled the intensity of that training. He described how the instructors relentlessly pushed them beyond the limits of what they believed was possible, emphasizing that the success of their missions depended on maintaining unwavering accuracy even under extreme duress. The organization of the code itself was a constant evolution, adapting swiftly to emerging technological feats and wartime developments. This meant that the vocabulary and encryption methods were continuously changing to stay ahead of enemy interceptions. For instance, a revolutionary leap in technology led to the atom bomb being colloquially called a yashi, which translated to metal egg, illustrating how even the names of weapons adopted innovative coded terms. Similarly, kamikaze pilots, who were tasked with dangerous missions involving electronic warfare, referred to their operational signals as neti or deathwind. Each new code term was derived through a logical reasoning process understandable to Navajo speakers, yet remained utterly incomprehensible to those unfamiliar with their linguistic framework. By the middle of the year 1943, the Japanese intelligence services channeled an enormous effort into deciphering the unbreakable Navajo Code. The Imperial Navy's 4th Cryptanalysis Section dedicated over 30 expert analysts solely to interpreting the ongoing encrypted transmissions. Substantive resources were diverted towards understanding and cracking these communications, highlighting their importance on the global stage of wartime strategy. Captain Yoshiro Tanaka, tasked with breaking the code, employed a range of innovative techniques that reflected the high stakes involved. One approach leveraged musical analysis, examining tonal patterns in the encoded messages, similar to analyzing melodies, to find hidden clues. He also compared the Navajo Code speech with Native American recordings to identify any recurring sound signatures. Tanaka led a team that developed specialized recording equipment capable of slowing down radio transmissions while maintaining the phonetic integrity of the speech, much like a modern audio slowdown device, allowing for detailed examination without damaging the pitch or tone. They visualized the sound waves produced during transmissions on oscilloscopes, the electronic display devices that graphically represent audio signals, thus converting fleeting radio signals into tangible, analyzable images. Applying sophisticated statistical techniques, Japanese analysts scrutinized the frequency patterns and structures within the audio signals, seeking consistent features that might reveal underlying message structures. Despite these elaborate efforts, Lieutenant Commander Masao Yamada later disclosed that the most that could be achieved was the identification of certain recurring patterns, such as specific call signs and statistical correlations between message types and operational intensity. Yet, without understanding the actual words or their contextual meanings, these discoveries offered limited strategic value. Recognizing the vital importance of maintaining secret communication channels, Japanese military directives emphasized the imperative to capture Native American code talkers alive and offered substantial monetary rewards, amounting to 10,000 yen, roughly equivalent to 10 years' worth of a soldier's regular salary, to anyone who could provide artifacts or equipment associated with the Navajo Code Talkers. Several close calls happened, but despite their efforts, the Japanese forces were never able to capture a code talker along with their gear intact, thus preserving the secrecy of their linguistic protection. The strategic, vital role of those Navajo Code Talkers became evident during the Central Pacific campaigns. In the Battle of Tarawa in November 1943, 6 Navajo Code Talkers sustained continuous communication over a grueling 76 hours of fierce and often brutal combat, underpinning the Allied forces' coordinated efforts. Among them, Lloyd Oliver transmitted messages non-stop for nearly 2 days, 48 hours, to coordinate naval gunfire support, despite relentless enemy shelling and chaos on the battlefield. As the Mariana Islands campaign unfolded, 24 Navajo Code Talkers worked tirelessly around the clock at Saipan. Their role was pivotal in maintaining communication lines amidst the chaos. Lieutenant Commander Takashi Hirakawa had successfully decoded conventional military communications, which allowed the Japanese to anticipate the upcoming invasion. However, the moment the invading Marines touched down, the tactical intelligence derived from those decoded signals vanished, leaving commanders feeling abandoned and blind to enemy movements, highlighting a critical vulnerability. In a harrowing example of the Code Talkers' resilience, at Palilou, Navajo Code Talker Jimmy King transmitted vital information for 6 hours during a fierce counterattack after his partner was killed. Under direct enemy fire, He coordinated artillery support from 3 different battalions, successfully delivering 40 messages with flawless accuracy. Such acts of bravery exemplified the critical importance of these communicators in the chaos of war. The most celebrated during World War II, the efforts of Navajo radio operators, known as code talkers, proved to be an extraordinary and vital element of military communication. These brave individuals transmitted and received over 800 messages without making a single error, a feat that illustrated their remarkable skill and unerring precision. These transmissions encompassed a broad and vital scope, from coordinating the seizure of key landing zones involving more than 30,000 Marines, to directing naval gunfire launched from a fleet of around 100 ships and providing critical close air support missions. They also relayed enemy troop positions, ordered medical evacuations, dispatched supplies, and transmitted tactical directives, all under relentless enemy fire. Their communications remained intact, secure, and flawlessly executed despite the chaos and danger surrounding them. The importance of these Navajo code talkers was vividly underscored by Major Connor, who later testified that without the Navajo operators, taking the strategic island of Awima would have been impossible. The seamless and swift flow of information they provided was essential to success on the battlefield. During the initial 48 hours of active combat, I personally observed 6 Navajo radio nets working tirelessly around the clock. Over this period, these nets exchanged, in total, more than 800 messages flawlessly, a staggering achievement reflecting their mastery of the intricate code complexly built upon their native language. Entire critical operations were directed using this code, which was the only language understood and unbreakable by enemy forces. Their code was so sophisticated that even adversaries attempted to crack its encryption, but to no avail. Lieutenant Colonel Shigo Hayashi of the Japanese military observed to his superior, expressing that American cryptographers successfully kept their codes, especially the Navajo-based Marine Tactical Code, entirely secure from interception or decipherment. Indeed, requests for artillery support relayed through Navajo became the difference between destroying enemy positions and losing vital terrain. Requests that could be completed in as little as 20 seconds, a task that would have otherwise taken a desperately slow half-hour by conventional means. This speed and security proved to be a decisive factor in American victories. At the pivotal Battle of Okinawa, which involved deploying an enormous force of approximately 183,000 U.S. troops over a span of 82 days, Navajo code talkers played an indispensable role in coordinating the entire assault. Despite Japanese efforts to jam signals, employ voice mimicry, or otherwise compromise the code, they could not replicate or understand the tonal qualities that made Navajo communication invulnerable. Lieutenant Hiroshi Miyamoto, a Japanese officer tasked with mimicking Navajo speech, reportedly sounded, according to code talker Alfred Newman, as if he was goggling rather than speaking, an awkward imitation that failed utterly to decipher the true code. Perhaps the most historically significant moment in the Code Talkers' War came on August 14, 1945. It was on this day that Code Talker Teddy Draper transmitted the war's most momentous message, Nehima Edigini Adinil, a Navajo phrase meaning Japanese surrender. Remarkably, this pivotal message was sent via Navajo code directly through their secure network, bypassing conventional channels, and signaled the end of hostilities in the Pacific Theater. For these Native Americans, their language was not just a means of communication, but a weapon in the fight for freedom, culminating in a symbolic and fitting closure to their wartime contributions. Following the cessation of hostilities, military interrogations revealed the full extent and complete failure of Japanese cryptanalysis efforts aimed at their codes. Lieutenant General Chiso Arisu, then Japan's chief intelligence officer, directly admitted that their side had never succeeded in breaking the delicate U.S. Marine Tactical Code built upon Navajo. Although they had managed to crack other codes, those used by the Army or Air Force or diplomatic traffic, they confirmed that the Marine Code remained entirely secure, a fact that provided the Allied forces with an insurmountable advantage. Captain Yasuji Kawamoto reported that Japanese intelligence agents had meticulously recorded thousands of transmissions over several years and studied them closely, hoping to find a loophole. Yet, despite 3 years of research and analysis by the best linguists they could muster, nothing worked. The U.S. Code Talkers code represented their greatest cryptoanalytic failure, a secure fortress of encrypted language forged from Navajo. By the year 1944, analysts within the Japanese military had suspected that Navajo tonal patterns bore similarities to indigenous American languages. Their desire to understand and crack the code led them to request assistance from German cryptanalysts. Unfortunately for them, the difficulties posed by wartime logistics and the Germans' own ignorance of Navajo linguistics prevented any breakthroughs. Yamada, a Japanese colonel involved in the intelligence effort, later confided that their inability to decipher marine communications cost thousands of Japanese lives, the full magnitude of which they could only comprehend in retrospect. Every marine operation from that point onward, post-1942, performed under the veil of secrecy. Military actions became mysterious. The Navajo warriors who served as code talkers underwent a profound spiritual ceremony that served to cleanse and purify them from the taint of warfare. This ritual was not merely symbolic, it was an essential act of spiritual renewal, a sacred moment that reconnected these men with their cultural roots and imbued them with renewed strength and purpose. As Dan Urke explained, their indigenous language, which had been previously used as a tool for the destruction of enemies through military communication, was now being reclaimed and revered as a potent source of healing. These ceremonies worked to remind the warriors that their language was more than mere words. It was a sacred vessel, integral to their identity and spiritual well-being. Back in 1968, this knowledge about the Navajo language's critical role in wartime communication was officially declassified, shedding light on the incredible ingenuity of these warriors. The very next year, at a gathering of the 4th Marine Division, the extraordinary contributions of the Navajo Code Talkers first gained widespread acknowledgement. This recognition grew over the years and culminated on August 14, 1982, when President Ronald Reagan officially declared a special day in tribute to the Navajo Code Talkers. The day became known as National Navajo Code Talkers Day. However, perhaps the most momentous and celebrated recognition took place on July 26, 2001, when President George W. Bush presented the Congressional Gold Medals to the original 29 Navajo Code Talkers in the majestic Capitol Rotunda. Sadly, only 5 of the original heroes were alive to attend this historic event. During the ceremony, Bush eloquently paid homage by stating, "Today we honor 29 Native Americans who provided a service that no other could give, helping their country prevail through their invaluable and unique contribution." Chester Nez, himself a veteran, responded quietly but with immense pride, "We were ordinary men faced with an extraordinary task. We used our sacred language as a weapon to help win the war." Although the Navajo are perhaps the most renowned tribe for this invaluable contribution, they were not the only indigenous group involved in the Code Talker program. In fact, 14 other tribes also provided code talkers during the wars. The concept was initially pioneered during World War I in the efforts of a man named Chaupion, who devised the use of indigenous languages for secure military communication. During the Second World War, 17 Comanche soldiers served as code talkers in Europe and notably participated in the D-Day landings. Other tribes, such as the Hopi, Cherokee, Lakota, and many more, contributed their own languages to ensure the security of military transmissions. The act of recognition and appreciation for these communities was officially passed in 2008 through the Code Talkers Recognition Act, which acknowledged the vital contributions of all Native tribes involved. John Brown, Jr., a respected voice among the survivors, humbly reflected, "They once told us our language was pointless or primitive. Yet when the war necessitated it, they desperately needed it to win." The Navajo Code, in particular, demonstrated conclusively that Native American languages possessed a remarkable level of complexity and sophistication. The Code Talkers swiftly modernized their language to meet the frantic demands of wartime, creating grammatical constructs and employing metaphors uniquely suited for military contexts. The agglutinative structure of Navajo, the ability to combine multiple ideas into a single word, allowed what would normally require a lengthy paragraph in English to be expressed succinctly through brief, meaningful phrases. Dr. William Morgan, an expert on the subject, noted that these innovations proved indigenously developed languages were far from primitive. Instead, they could efficiently convey and encode complex ideas, from ceremonial rituals to battlefield strategies. The Navajo Code became a form of cultural encryption, a linguistic barrier that military adversaries could not breach, offering an unprecedented level of security that even the most advanced mathematical encryption methods of the time could not overcome. This success had a profound influence on post-war intelligence operations, setting a precedent for incorporating linguistic ingenuity into national security. Even in the face of advancing technology, the fundamental insight remained. Human languages, with their rich structure and unique metaphors, could surpass mechanical encryption in the realm of secure communication. Colonel David Hatch summarized this achievement by stating that they had created something truly unparalleled, a code that was never broken, never compromised, a testament to human linguistic capability surpassing computational techniques. In the 1980s, Japanese scholars undertook a detailed study of the Navajo Code Talkers' remarkable failureless record. Professor Teo Yoshikawa uncovered that approximately 30 cryptography analysts had dedicated 2 entire years, consulting with multiple universities, to fully unravel the transmissions. Commander Minoru Yamada admitted with some astonishment, "We knew by late 1943 that the code was Navajo, but could not ascertain which tribal language it was." Lieutenant Commander Shigeru Fukumoto further admitted that the use of a native language was itself so elegant and simple that it never crossed their minds to suspect it could be a military code. By the 19th throughout history, the concept of perfect encryption has often seemed like an unattainable ideal, pushing the limits of technological and strategic ingenuity. Despite the sophistication of the world's most advanced cipher systems, there have been moments when even the best efforts prove futile against determined adversaries. In a striking example of this, the United States saw its leading codebreakers, respected as some of the most skilled cryptologists in Asia, face an overwhelming challenge when they encountered a wholly unbreakable secret. Their confidence was shaken as they confronted an encryption method that rendered their expertise ineffective, highlighting how true secrecy can sometimes defy even the most advanced human intellect and technology. Among the remarkable figures associated with this period were the original group of 30 Navajo men, known as the Navajo Code Talkers, whose innovative use of their native language created an unbreakable military code during World War II. Sadly, Chester Nez, recognized as the last surviving member of the pioneering group of 29, passed away on the 4th of June in the year 2014. Today, from the original cadre who served, only 2 veterans still remain alive. These are Thomas H. Bay and Peter MacDonald. While neither of them was among the initial 29, both played crucial roles in sustaining and operationalizing the code during the war, with Peter MacDonald extending his remarkable speaking engagements well into his 96th year, perpetuating the legacy. This history powerfully illustrates how the core strength of America lies within its diversity. Our nation's rich mosaic of languages and cultures continuously contributes unique perspectives and capabilities, making us resilient and formidable. The Navajo language, which for generations was suppressed through policies aimed at cultural assimilation, has now been prolific in digitized educational programs and military applications and is increasingly recognized as strategically vital. Federal agencies have officially commemorated the story of the Code Talkers, referencing their role in national security. Today's Native American youth participate with renewed pride as they learn and embrace their ancestral languages, reclaiming traditions once nearly lost to history. Experts like Dr. Jennifer Denadale have observed that the Code Talkers did more than just craft a cipher. They transformed the very way Native Americans view themselves and shift perceptions across the nation. They validated the importance of their languages, demonstrating that these are far from relics kept in museums. Instead, they are vibrant, living resources capable of safeguarding the nation. In testimony to their extraordinary feat, the Navajo Code Talkers not only established the most formidable code in military history, an undecipherable language that withstood intense Japanese efforts throughout the entire span of World War II, they also achieved it under the brutal conditions of combat, transmitting tens of thousands of messages flawlessly. Inevitably, what this achievement symbolizes goes even deeper than just a technical victory. The use of their native language, in a period when the government actively suppressed and attempted to eradicate indigenous dialects, became a profound act of cultural resilience and resistance. These young Native men, often coming from marginalized communities, harnessed their unique linguistic and cultural skills to provide capabilities that even highly trained allies could not emulate. Their efforts arose at a time when Japanese forces had prepared comprehensive strategies and advanced technological tools to intercept and decode enemy communications. Yet the Japanese failed to comprehend or access the rich diversity embedded within the American mosaic, and their inability to decipher the Navajo Code was fundamentally a reflection of their blindness. This failure revealed that their strategy, which relied heavily on racial and technological superiority, was ultimately flawed when confronted with the power of cultural diversity. It was their profound underestimate of the strength inherent in human differences which led to their defeat. Japanese officials, including Lieutenant General Arasui, publicly acknowledged that Japan had never succeeded in breaking the code used by the Marine Navajo communicators. His admittance was significant, an acknowledgement that their adversaries were employing a form of warfare that depended not solely on machine-based encryption, but on the richness of human cultures and languages, sources of strength that could not be fully understood or controlled. The Navajo Code Talkers embodied an America that foreign ideologies could never accommodate. The concept that human diversity structured around languages and cultures could serve as a strategic advantage. Their success demonstrated to the world that America's most profound strength was not merely its industrial capacity or technological innovation, but the rich tapestry of human identities and expressions that compose the nation. Ironically, the very educational institutions, including some the Navajo youth were encouraged or forced to attend, were the same settings where efforts to diminish the language were historically undertaken. Yet those same languages became vital to clinching victory in the Pacific Theater. Today, as the last of the original Code Talkers depart into history, their legacy remains vibrant. The language once targeted for suppression is now taught with pride in classrooms, and Native American veterans are honored for their exceptional service, often at higher per capita rates than veterans from other communities. The rooted principle that diversity bolsters national security has since become a standard doctrine, embraced widely across military and governmental spheres. The voices of Navajo speakers resonating over the Pacific battlefields carried more than. The message conveyed by the Code Talkers was one that transcended language barriers and cultural divides, representing a profound truth that resonates to this very day. These individuals, steadfast in their mission, transmitted messages that the Americans of that era, and even the decipherers of code, struggled to fully understand. Yet amidst the complexity of their specialized communication, they delivered a message far more impactful and universal, that diversity itself embodies an incredible source of resilience. The core lesson they imparted is that simply embracing a multitude of different cultural backgrounds and perspectives can significantly bolster the strength of a nation or community. Embedded within their cultural heritages is a formidable power, a power rooted in the rich and varied tapestry of human experience. Moreover, indigenous knowledge, often regarded as ancient or esoteric, has proven invaluable in addressing contemporary challenges. When young Navajo men utilize their sacred language, a language reserved for spiritual and cultural significance, as both a protective secret code and an instrument fostering peace, they demonstrated for all time that the essence of America's most potent secret weapon lies not in technology or brute strength, but in the inherent strength of its diverse human fabric. This metaphorical encryption, which cannot be broken, is woven from the very fabric of human difference, an unassailable encoding born from the limitless scope of human wisdom, story, and culture. It persists unbroken because it originates from the sharing of different perspectives, each one adding to a collective resilience that cannot be defeated. When Native children continue to speak their ancestral languages with pride, they carry forward this unbroken code, ensuring it remains vibrant and alive across generations. Additionally, every acknowledgement and celebration of minority contributions fortifies individual and collective identities, emphasizing that our apparent differences are, in truth, our greatest sources of strength. It is through this recognition that we understand more clearly that our distinctions, whether based on language, culture, or experience, do not divide us but connect us, making us stronger when intertwined. The proof of this is eternal. Many voices, many peoples, and a multitude of languages, when united, form a mosaic that is indivisible. This mosaic embodies the very foundation of freedom, resilient, unbreakable, created through cooperation and mutual respect in diversity. In essence, the legacy of these code talkers is an enduring testament showing that our greatest strength as a nation and as a human collective lies in our ability to celebrate and harness our diversity. A diversity that, when embraced, acts as an unbreakable code safeguarding liberty forever.